In the last laugh, Lady Illusion disguised herself as Mark while he's sick on April Fool's Day. Now, for this episode, it kind of shows that even though Lady Illusion has feelings for Ace, she's not necessarily one of the good guys. While her loyalty is questioned by Staffhead out of all characters, it's pretty clear that she's still one of the villains, and she just cares about Ace and none of his friends. And by ruining Mark's life, well, yeah, just shows that she's still loyal to Lord Fear to some extent. Now, this episode kind of this episode is pretty much one giant middle finger to Mark, as his whole social life is slightly ruined, especially his relationship with Samantha. And yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about this episode. Actually, no, I tell a lie. There is one other thing I can say. The actor who plays Mark, it's Thomas. He's got a weird last name, but I know his first name's Thomas. He's clearly enjoying himself. He's having a ball playing a more evil version of Mark. And this episode is worth it just for his performance. Download Disaster is another Ace Light episode, which means, once again, for the third time in this series, Ace Lightning has been put out of commission, leaving to Mark to try and fend for himself. I suppose they do these episodes to save on budget and to develop Mark as a character. But in this episode, they try to download new powers for Ace through an internet cable, but unfortunately he contracts a he pretty much gets a virus instead, and it turns him to stone for a majority of the episode, leaving to Mark to try and, as I said, try to fend for himself. It pretty much follows the exact same story beat as the last two episodes that did something like this, where Ace turns human or turns into a zombie. Mark tries to help him, the villains find out, they kidnap him or something, and Mark has to try and save him. Only this time it's Lady Illusion who saves him, and once again her loyalty is put into question. Mostly by Staffhead. Out of all the characters, it's Staffhead who actually tries to figure out that Lady Illusion has feelings for Ace. Now, again, this is another episode where Mark pretty much has his entire social life ruined. This is the episode where him and Samantha officially break up, and it's also the first episode where Samantha's friend Heather starts getting more involved with the plot, and that leads into something that I will eventually get to when the show gets to it. But as a little side note, at one point Pigface gets trapped in a bin and we just see his feet walking with the bin on top of him, and I think it looks practical. In fact, there's some shots where we see a practical Pigface, and again, I just love it when I see practical effects in the show, especially if it's off the video game characters. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, I don't know if I'm the only one who notices it, but a lot of children's shows from the early 2000s and I suppose the late 90s, they tend to have an episode that's a clip show, which is pretty much an episode that just shows clips from previous episodes. They're kind of like the best moments of the series in one episode, highlighting what things that made the show stand out. And in this episode, it focuses on Duff Kent, the owner of the carnival that the villains take over, as he goes to a psychiatrist, and the one thing you get from this episode is that you just feel sorry for the poor guy. It really shows how psychologically damaging it is having all these, pretty much having all, pretty much having your daily life taken over by monsters, and the pressure and struggle it is. And it gives Kent a moment to shine. Really, this is his episode, and something that I'm just going to point out now that I've never really talked about before, and I didn't notice until I watched this episode, is Mark's friend from England, Pete. Every episode starts with him in a pretty much in a video message to Mark, saying what he thinks of everything that Mark's telling him. And I suppose the reason why the character was included was to remind audiences that Mark did have a life before this, a normal life. And yeah, it's a nice little, I don't want to say bookends, because most episodes don't end with a message from him, but it's a nice little, this is the beginning of the episode when he appears. But apart from that, one other thing I've got to say about this episode, it just shows you that, even though this is meant to be a superhero teen sitcom type show, it is the superhero video game aspect that we all enjoy watching, and this episode shows all the best bits from it. So I wouldn't recommend, if you decide to watch the whole series, you can easily skip this one unless you're a Duff Kent fan.